Are you tired of scrolling for hours trying to find the perfect horror movie for you to watch, only just to end up either watching some BS or just watching nothing at all? I've certainly had that problem before, but hey, if you also had that problem, get with your boy Tech, and we're gonna go over some of the best horror movies on all of these streaming platforms, starting with Netflix. So without further ado, let's jump into it. What's going on, spooky gang? I hope y'all are having a blessed day. It's a great day. Super excited to upload this good old horror content for y'all. And I don't know about y'all in y'all area, but it's been raining like hell here, so there ain't been too much of an opportunity to go outside and actually do something. So that's actually perfect weather for us horror movie lovers. So what a better time for me to upload a video based on what are some of the best horror movies to watch on all of these popular streaming apps. But before we even get into that, y'all go ahead, subscribe. The Spooky Game with Tarot Tech, we're almost at 500 subs. We're like a little less than, I think we're about like 5 subs away at this point or so. So I know by the time that this video drops and everything, we're going to be at 500 subs. So I just wanted to make sure that I let all you guys know how much I appreciate and love all the support that the channel's been getting. I love all the horror fans out there, and I love engaging with you guys as well. So seeing all of your comments and all of the different movies and recommendations that you guys provide yourself as well, all of that means the world to me. I want to continue to keep growing this community so horror could take over YouTube as a whole. So if you haven't already, like I said, subscribe to the kid. We're on the road to 1K subs. Comment down below some of your favorite movies that are on Netflix. And with that being said, I'm gonna keep it a bean with y'all. A lot of these streaming apps really don't even have that good of horror movies, especially Netflix. So really gonna have to pull them bangers out for sure, just to make sure I get y'all right. But yeah, other than Netflix, of course, you know, at some point down the line, we'll look at Hulu and HBO Max, which I probably think is the best overall for horror. Peacock, Tubi, and Shudder. Well, Shudder is actually the best, but for the ones that almost everybody knows, it would definitely be probably HBO Max. Everybody could be watching some bangers instead of wasting their time scrolling or wasting their time on a trash ass movie. Like, nothing is worse than wasting your time on a bad movie. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into some of these recommendations. Starting out my list of some of the best horror movies that are on Netflix, it wouldn't be right for me to not start off with mentioning one of my favorite horror franchises, which would be the Conjuring universe. The Conjuring universe is pretty much all over Netflix. They have the first movie and 2, think they may have 3. They have The Nun, they have some of the other movies. The Conjuring universe as a whole is amazing. I've talked about it numerous times in my videos. I love the majority of the movie, so like as a whole it's really good. Now of course there's some duds in there for sure, so like The Nun 2, The Curse of La Llorona, all of that, like all those movies are kind of, but outside of that, like when you think of The Conjuring 1, Conjuring 2, Conjuring 3, some of the Annabelles, like Annabelle Comes Home and the first Annabelle, all those aside, so that's 5 movies right there out of their whole universe that I think are actually good movies. So if you get a chance to watch those, if you haven't already, and they'll get you right, especially if you're in for that paranormal haunted house type feel. The next movie that I want to mention is actually a movie that I mentioned in my last video, which was a Long Legs review, only because it was starring Micah Monroe. But the movie would be It Follows. It Follows is on Netflix, and It Follows is one of my top 10 favorite horror movies ever. I love everything about It Follows. It's one of the most unsettling movies I've ever watched. From an artistic and cinematography aspect, it's shot beautifully. The sound design is really nice. Like I said, Michael Monroe's performance as Jay is really good. And then just the whole premise of having this, you know, this sexual transmitted demon following you no matter what until you pass it on to somebody else. And then, you know, if something happens to that person, then it goes right back to you and goes down back down in that order. Something is just inherently creepy about that, and especially the fact that it continues to follow you, and it's always at a walking pace, like a walking snail's pace. So, you know, it's in no rush to get you, but it's always coming to get you, and you just never know what it's gonna look like. It could look like your best friend, it could look like your brother, your father, your mother, somebody that you don't know at all. So just that element alone makes this movie a complete banger, and and definitely one that you should check out on Netflix. The next movie that I want to mention, and it's a little more unfamiliar to what your typical horror fan has probably seen, and it is Veronica. Veronica is a movie that's based in Spain, and obviously it's also in Spanish. It's about this girl named Veronica. She experiences different terrifying and paranormal events after she played with the Ouija board to be able to contact someone. This movie is really good overall. If you're a person who is perfectly fine with watching movies in another language, this movie fits the bill for, a really good horror movie. The performance by the actor who played Veronica was very good. She was very solid. And what makes the movie really successful is its ability to have this real gritty and realistic atmosphere that, I don't know, it just makes the movie feel real. Like you feel like you're there with her, experiencing some of these different situations, and just, I don't know, it's just really dark, really good. Like I said, from a paranormal aspect for the people who love the paranormal, this movie, and then of course, along with her having to, not only protect herself, but protect her little brother, and everything that's going on with that. Like, it's just really good. It's just a really good movie, and is right in step with that, similar to the Conjuring movies. So you really can't go wrong with this movie at all. So 100% recommend, and definitely one that you should check out. All right, the next set of movies that I want to talk about, and yes, I said set, and it's because it is the Fear Street series. These movies are Netflix originals. They came out around 2021. And there's some movies that we really needed during the time, because you have to think 2021, that is like right in the heart and the prime of the pandemic. And and due to the pandemic, a lot of people weren't trying to go to the movie theaters to, mess around and get COVID, and everything in public seemed like it was really dirty and disgusting because of the pandemic. So being able to watch this series of movies at home really came through in the clutch for us. They're kind of like if the Stranger Things was a slasher. So you get a lot of that same feel because of, the different time periods. You have those young teenage characters, then you have, a little bit older teenage characters, and they're all working together to find different things out and, figure out who this killer is and all this good stuff. Like, it's really, really solid movies. And the thing that I like about them the most is they're kind of time stamped for a specific period for each movie. So like the first movie is based in 1994, then the second one is 78, and then the third one is 1666. But in terms of the order of the story itself, it's obviously 1666, 1978, then 1994. So you kind of watch it backwards, really. But it's really good, and definitely one that you should check out if you haven't seen it. Another movie that I want to mention is The Babadook. The Babadook came out in 2014. Really solid movie. Basically, it follows a mother named Amelia and her young son Samuel, who are tormented by a sinister presence after reading a mysterious children's book about a creature called the Babadook. Best thing about this movie is not only, just from like a paranormal aspect, but just the psychological terror and the horror that they go through. A lot of the movie, and a part of the reason why the Babadook is even, coming after them after reading it, is it feeds off of that terror and that psychological aspect. The mother and the son trying to mentally and emotionally recover from the husband/father's passing. When you add all of those elements together, it cooks up for a really good movie. There aren't really any cheap scares. There's really good tension. So definitely a must watch, and it's definitely more so for someone who is into a little more of that slow burn type of horror. When I tell you the kid Sam is annoying as hell with the way he be screaming, that's the only thing that's just kind of wild. Like, he just be like shrieking, like just yelling. But outside of that, very solid movie, and definitely one that you should watch for sure. So those are like the main movies that I wanted to recommend. But outside of those, I wanted to list a couple of honorable mentions. Those would notably be Geralds Game. Geralds Game is about, is basically about a couple who is trying to spice up their marriage. So they go to this remote lake house. The wife gets handcuffed to the bed, and while they're in the middle of trying to spice things up, the husband dies unexpectedly. And so with her being handcuffed to the bed, she has to figure out how she can get herself uncuffed, and you have to remember they're at a remote lake house, so it's just them. There's no people coming, nothing like that. So you have to think about that aspect of how is she gonna get out of this, and all the different psychological things that she goes throughout the movie. Definitely worth watching if you get a chance. The other honorable mention would be Thanksgiving. A lot of people love Thanksgiving. It's a bona fide slasher and just a complete gore fest for if you're like one of those gore hounds and you just love to see people getting messed up in probably in some of the most wild ways possible, then this is the movie for you. Along with it having some comedic elements and things of that nature. Pretty decent movie overall. I'm not the biggest fan, but we also have to remember we're talking about Netflix, and they do not by any stretch of the imagination have the best selection of movies. So I'm just trying to point out the bangers and some pretty solid movies that will get you right. You know, you could say that, and then, you know, The Autopsy of Jane Doe and some other movies. But yeah, that's pretty much it as far as good horror movies and Netflix. But yeah, that's all I got for y'all, Spooky Gang. Y'all comment down below what are some of your favorite horror movies on Netflix. It'll be really interested to see what y'all say. And that's even if you even like Netflix for your horror movies. So that's a whole other thing by itself. But like I mentioned earlier, subscribe to the kid. We're on the road to 1K subs, very close to 500. So I can't wait for us to go ahead, hit that mark, and then just continue the momentum and keep growing and growing and growing. And the Spooky Gang gonna be on top of YouTube. So yeah, go ahead, subscribe, and y'all check out some of those horror movies that I mentioned. And until next time, y'all stay spooky.